Well, it's getting better and better, more and more interesting. Going from what we have done the past year, we will have a little sneak peek into what we will do moving on. So again, if you have any questions, it's a bit hard to see if you raise your hands with all the lights, but you can try to get the attention and we will try to answer, or you feel free to drop by afterwards. We will also have the advisory session after this, where we have some time for feedback and covering those topics.
So this is a session in 2 parts, right?
Yeah. So first, roadmap. Third is about potential product offerings. So anyone recognizing this screenshot? It's from a very good movie by Kubrick. It's The Space Odyssey, 2001. So it's one of the opening scenes where there's a group of monkeys that encounter this monolith. And shortly after, they invent the weapon, giving them some advantages against rivaling tribes. This monolith also appears 3 different times throughout the movie. Every time there is a big major breakthrough of the human evolution. So that takes us into the evolution on how we have been working 3D experience or matrix. So 20 years ago, this is or was how we were adapting the UI. We customized it. So we had the user group pushing the PLM team into changing and customizing the system. The PLM team were writing large specifications, and there was a very big development team that, in a waterfall manner, implemented these changes to the system by hacking JSP pages, writing schema scriptlets, writing JPOs, and so on. So quite time-consuming. Then we encountered one of these monoliths, and the TVCs were invented 18 years back. And it gave us a good tool to, it took us from customizing the system into configuring the UIs for the system, allowing us to work with a smaller dev team, but also to have a more rapid iterations between the PLM team and development. And we're about to reach one of these milestones once again, taking the next big step to go from a system that's configured by system administrators server side to something that you could configure directly in the UI, allowing for really quick iterations between the users and the PLM team. So no need to wait half a year for the next delivery to the system to get your new stuff in there. It would be enough to go to the PLM guys that could set up a view in no time in the system. A real live production system would of course be, some parts would be configuration by XML, system administration, but the idea is that there is a lot of use cases in the system that are not that complex. And the idea is that those many use cases could be covered directly in the UI. Of course, there will still be those super complex use cases that would need coding for specific logic. But with these capabilities, it would be possible to push this line, doing more directly in the UI. And why is that important? I think looking at the graph here, the use cases, we would cover a lot of area in this graph. So it's a lot of use cases that are not that complex. So we could avoid a lot of services doing more ourselves. And it would also be a way to have a quicker iteration with the users. You could respond, set up a view quickly. They could have a look and react, and they could refine in quicker iterations than having something in the next delivery. A little bit on how we think, or our idea how to solve this. And we see the dashboard as the vessel here. So allowing administrators to create and share views directly in the UI, in dashboard, and use building blocks like the saved searches that Piyush showed you. So base the data content of a dashboard from a saved search, and then use end user configurability, adding your own columns, defining your own gadgets, widgets, and so on directly in the UI, and then share it to different user groups. So that's how we intend to solve this. So yes, to push your imagination a bit in the right direction, this is how it could look. Probably not. It will probably not look exactly like this, but just the idea here. So adding some commands here for administrators to allow them to create new views in dashboards, base it on searches using the saved search functionality from the new search component, and also allow them to share it. To the left here we see just we would add the possibility for the administrators to also create the actual widget content, selecting the type of chart or which columns should appear in the table based on the data that's present. And then at the end, share it. One really interesting thing as well is the thing to the right there. So we added the category menu filter a few releases back, and it allows you to just swap the top panel and the category with the TVC-based one, allowing you for some configurations in there. And by adding a button for administrators in there, it would allow us to set up a UI that's 100% end user defined. So you wouldn't even have to configure the entry point. So for really simple use cases, you could start off by just installing TVCs, configure your views, and then later on add configured system administration based views for the really complex use cases if it needed. And we already started. This is a proof of concept. It's ugly. Columns are not sorted in alphabetic order or anything, but we add custom column button there to the table chooser, allowing administrators to select from all the attributes available for all the data in the table, and create these new columns without hitting the server or without accessing the server or writing XML. It's all stored now the same way as the normal table configurations are stored in a data object, allowing for just easy share of it. And another example with widgets, same thing here, allowing users to create a new widget. I want a pie, I want to base it on state. No need to write the XML or providing a set of available widgets in a service project. It's just software capabilities out of the box as you install it. So that's a few of the building pieces to get to this new era. Another area that we have been working with when it comes to end user administration is workflows. We've heard it's workflows are complex. It's composite processes spanning multiple life cycles, multiple objects, and you don't go in and modify policies in production system live. So I don't think you would like that kind of power with workflow either, because you could easily ruin or get a lot of data or processes stuck. So our approach here is to create the end user configurability and adding variants of already existing workflow configurations. So you always start off from a system configured workflow where all the complex stuff is done. And then you can create variants of that, adding tasks, removing tasks that are not mandatory and doesn't really do any system user level auto promotions and stuff in the background that's potentially dangerous. And this will give a lot of flexibility and cover most of the needs when it comes to configuration for workflow in maintenance mode. So that was the first thing, end user administration, removing the need for configuration on the server. And second thing is that we see is a controlled shift towards helium, or a merge between the two components. So we heard this morning that JM, they were using helium, Van der Lande was using TVC or classic, and we like to just see it as one. It's the value components. There's a problem today because of this. We have two implementations. It's hard to understand when to use which. Some features might only exist in one, and so on. So we want to make a controlled merged or controlled switch to be able to just speed up development on one of those. I think this is nothing new, really. We already have a lot of these cross component or cross track components like workflow collaboration, but also the new search and 3D dashboard things. That's something that's in common between the classic and helium implementations. So it's just a matter of a few already existing components that we want to also merge here. And as we see it, forms and the dashboard are the ones that is closest ahead in time. We have already started to think about how to do this, and what's needed to actually make the shift is first off, just styling of helium to make it fit better within 3D space. That's the number one most obvious thing, that it doesn't really look as 3D space does in general. So styling it, but then also to integrate it to classic better. So you could live in a mixed application where you have the full power and strength of classic tables with all the advanced capabilities, but you use the helium form to create data to classic tables and update it.
And this should feel coherent and the same look and feel and feel as one, basically.
And the benefit for you and us is you will have one clear choice. You will see the duplicated pace in which we add features, as we could use the full team on one instead of maintaining two separate tracks. The classic forms, we don't target to kill classic forms. We just see we will reject more improvement requests and refer to helium instead, and we will kind of put that in a maintenance mode. So your existing configurations will still work. We will solve bugs for it. Yeah, dashboard next. We don't see tables to merge in the near future. It's too big difference there to do something soon.
So this is a small POC that we did just to show how this can look. We see structure browser on the left-hand side, and we have clicked in this preview column with this white document icon there to open a form in this side panel. So that's how it looks today when you open a side panel form with TVC structure browser in the side panel. And when you click, there should be... So this is a video of where we are instead using a helium form as that side panel. So there obviously needs to be some styling done to make this fit better altogether. But on this easy POC level, you already can do this today, since it's iframe-based structure in this. So this is more or less to give you an idea that it could look like this, but imagine a bit more coherent theming. So now I'm just going through some fields and filling them. That's not really important. Yeah.
We will have a continued focus on 3D dashboard and the UPS. As mentioned earlier, it's a clear direction of DS. They will move things from 3D space more and more into 3D dashboard. And we want to be there as the obvious choice when it comes to content, because 3D dashboard concept, it's end user configurable views with the holders, but it's not end user configurable the content that you put into these widget holders. And that's where we see TVCs as a good solution. So next up is to integrate with built-in out-of-the-box search, free text search on top with Exalid-based data and the 6W tags. So as you see, free text search here will be integrated with the already existing search in structure features of TVCs, and the 6W tags will allow administrators to map different columns with the different Ws. So if you want some column to appear under who, what, or when, you just configure that in the widget preferences, and it will appear to the left, up to the left here. Yes, the proof of concept so far. The second big thing is to support the full UPS use cases, enabling a starting point where TVCs covers everything, all functionality you have in the product structure editor. So if you want to complete those use cases, you can just have the MCAD UPS configurations as a starting point, covering 100%, and then you can continue from there to add columns, charts, forms, and so on to that. And theming, it doesn't exactly look as the different components that exist in 3D dashboard, but it's also hard. We don't see a very clear line there. We already see differences in the different widgets, so not sure exactly what to use as a template for our 3D dashboard styling. Some tables are missing the zebra lines, which is not good when it comes to long tables because it's hard to see which line data is for. But what's sure is that we have to do something. We saw the new functionality in search that Piyush demonstrated. We will continue integrating the new search for classic, enabling using this configurable search UIs to populate data in classic dashboards, but also for create connect use cases. And we think also it's a good idea to provide some templates to cover the functionality that exists in the 6W tags. So by replacing that, it's an easy starting point where we are just have the same functionality and just be able to add to that.
So this little download objects for offline use thing that I showed before the break, we see these background caching mechanisms. That's something really interesting on strategic level. If we can figure out what users are likely to navigate to next, and if we could fetch that in advance for them, that could be instant for them once they actually click the object. So we are not exactly sure what to do with it yet, but these background fetching capabilities, we think, can give a big boost in this perceived performance. So we do still download the object and make the network requests, but if it's ready on demand, then the user will not notice it. So this is to be explored. We have a lot of ideas here.
And here is the data-driven UI capabilities of Helium that's making this possible to utilize technologies such as web workers and
using service worker, fetching in background, and yeah, technology enables this.
All right, so that was roadmap. 3 takeaways: end user, giving the power to the end user to create views in 3D experience, but also control the shift towards Helium. We will merge the 2 different components or the 2 different versions of the UI, so you have one clear choice, and continued work with 3D dashboard and UPS. And that takes us into probably the most exciting part, new offerings and finding new ways to make life easier working with 3D experience. We will present some ideas that we think are interesting, and we look forward to get some feedback on those ideas during the advisory session after. In general, with our UI configuration components, our mission is to make this guy, the user, productive and happy. At the end, that's all it is, and doing that in a cost-efficient way. But there's more ways than just adapting the system, configuring the UIs that we use to do this. We also have user trainings, we create manuals, training videos, we have webinars for each release, and it's a quite big effort and quite some budget usually to also cover these other things than just customizing the system. And now there are new ways of actually doing this. It's a trend to use on the web. They usually call it digital adaptation. It's softwares getting in between your system and the user. So without affecting or making changes to your system, you can still make guides and help appear to the user as it were directly into the system. And the idea here is that the training is not enough as a complement to adapting the system to make users happy and efficient. And benefits by using one of these could be reduced need for training. You could feedback your most common support cases directly into this application. And this is big business. There are a lot of big actors out there already doing this. These are two examples, WhatFix, WalkMe. Here you can see the red part here with the self-help to the left. It's giving users help in Salesforce. This without customizing or changing anything in Salesforce. Maybe even the Salesforce is on the cloud, but you have added something in between that appears to the user as it's in there. Also with WalkMe, you see the example. And it allows you to seamlessly adding guides inside the UI. And we know that some of you have done projects with softwares like this. And as we understand, it usually fails, or I haven't heard of any successful implementation with 3D Experience on this. And we think that the reason for this is that 3D Experience platform is not a focus application for them. They haven't developed their solutions with 3D Experience. They haven't validated it with it. We think we could turn that around and copy all of these good ideas and create something with 3D Experience as focus. And we don't have to care about the other systems. We could do something, we know 3D Experience, and we can do something that's tailor-made to hook into 3D Experience and work well there. Just to exemplify, so we're looking at, I think it's 19x, and it's the change process. And what's the next step? It's kind of hard to understand by just looking at the situation here. You would probably have to get your manual. Okay, I should set the responsible for approval on this or whatever it is. So what the user then would do instead is to access this little help down to the right that looks like it's part of 3D Experience, but it's actually not. It's just a layer in between. And he would check, okay, I want to get the help from related to the change process, and he would automatically just be guided. Okay, it's time to set the approval list. So go to the main category, and it's all based on actually XPath or CSS selectors from the UI. So it's getting pieces from the UI to kind of navigate where in the process it is. click there and it appears on the edit pen, go into edit mode, go here, set approval list. And this could really speed up the productivity for this user and help user acceptance. Also, if you have common support questions that recur, you could typically just have the support team add sections here directly in the UI to cover those, and hopefully that would lower the number of request tickets on that particular area. So the technical concept to kind of do the magic here with the layer in between is we use something called a web extension as enabler here. So with Chrome and Firefox, this technology is supported, and
for example, the TVC file manager.
Yeah, it's used for the file manager, exactly. And you could just download and add the client part from the web then. And it could write HTML then for the different parts on top of the UI. Administrators could use similar technology to bind different instructions by marking parts in the UI. When this field says it's a change order and the state is in work, this instruction should appear. And then he uploads that instruction to maybe some cloud storage somewhere for the clients to consume when they need it. And just to highlight, there's no need to customize 3D experience to achieve this. And it could also open up for cloud-based services. So we could host the database containing all of these instructions. So could be really simple ownership model. And this is not just an idea. On paper, we have started doing some proof of concepts. So we are confident that we will be able to provide something here in this area. So that was idea 1 out of 3. Next thing is enterprise apps. It's somewhat related to the partner hub, but also to configurable UIs. So we are doing configurable UIs, and we have been doing that for a long time. And we have had 3D experience as focus area, but maybe if we just add a little, take one more step for our components, it could be putting some extra effort into the partner hub, or putting some extra effort in making our front-end components really
reusable.
Yeah, reusable or generic. We could open up for usage of that in other systems. So it's quite common in large companies like most of you that you have processes that run over multiple systems. And it's quite common also that you set up some homegrown applications on top to help with this type of processes. And usually it's some project where you get some consultants on board to implement the UIs, and after a few years the knowledge of the system it's not there anymore, and it gets expensive to maintain it. Maybe it's a browser support shift on the company, and then you have to get this homegrown system up to that as well. Or there's a strategy that we should have browser agnostic support for all our all our systems. And then you would have to revisit those apps again. So it's a bit painful to maintain your own homegrown stuff. And what if we could at least then provide the UIs for those applications? So if you were here last year, I think you recognized this, just making it a bit more clear here what it is. I think it could be two different things. Either it could be making just the front-end components generic enough to be able to configure for any application, or it could be taking another step with the partner hub components, making it not only for partner collaboration, but more of a generic tool to set up any app. And of course, one of the reasons is that you would get all of this built in. You don't have a big risky project to create, cover things like security or creating your own table or form components for each view. You would have that ready and just configure it for the different views. Last new product idea that we see, it's from, we have been exploring 3D dashboard quite deeply now, with giving support for the TVCs in 3D dashboard. And we made a technical discovery there, so we see a possibility to create a product, a more simple product than TVC perhaps, that's more tightly coupled with 3D dashboard. So it would use the 3D dashboard administration and distribution framework to hold the actual configurations. So instead of putting the XML files on the server as we do today, an administrator would define this under widget preferences directly in 3D dashboard and just distribute that to the different user groups. Then we could have a more marketplace-like approach where we could host lightweight front-end component widgets that could perhaps update without the need of doing something in the system, and access the data through some services that you would have to install. But it wouldn't have to be installed inside your 3D experience platform. It just has to have access to it, similar to TIFF. So this is a technical discovery, and we're not sure how it fits versus value components and all, but thinking about it a little bit, it could perhaps take the area that's less complex for all the use cases that are super simple, setting up just a table with certain data for certain users. You could react to that, and without installing anything on 3D Experience, you would be able to cover that. So proof of concept that we done with, in this case we use TIFF as services, but we created the front-end components. So here we use 3D dashboard preferences. We want to add a table. Let's say we have the scenario, a user asks us, I need a table with all the persons in the system. So instead of doing the ordering a project and delivering something in the next release window, you could just set it up yourselves. So preferences, persons, pick the columns that are available for persons, and add it to the dashboard for that user and distribute it. So now I logged in as the user, and it's available for him to use just 5 minutes later. And this without doing any system administration at all. So no harm at all to the technical solution. Just nicely hooked in from the side and using the 3D dashboard capabilities here as the enabler for this.